What's up, guys? Welcome back to yet another video about phrasal verbs. I know you guys should be very proud of me because I avoided teaching phrasal verbs for a very long time. Honestly, it's that gray area between, okay, is this considered grammar? Yes, but you kind of need to know it because if you want to speak English naturally, if you want to speak like a native, you have to constantly know what phrasal verbs to use. So it's the gray area. I don't want to teach grammar. I do enjoy grammar. I don't like teaching grammar, especially online. But phrasal verbs is like the gray area where it's like, it's kind of grammar, but then again, you kind of need to know what you're talking about here in order to speak English like a native. Today, I have the top 5 phrasal verbs that you must know, friendship editions, when you're hanging out with your friends, with your homies, with your posse.
F is for friends. Down here in the deep blue sea.
First one we're going to go over today is to catch up with. To catch up with. Now, this actually has 2 different definitions. The one that I plan to go over with you today means to reach the same level or standard as someone or something after falling behind. To reach the same level or standard as someone or something after falling behind. You are catching up with something. For example, your grades. Maybe you had an A the first 2 months, the second 2 months you had a B, then it went down to a C and you're like, oh no. I have to catch back up. I have to go back up to an A. All my friends still have A's. I'm the only one in the class that's falling down slowly. I have to catch back up. So that just means to reach the same level or standard as someone or something after falling behind. Now, we do use this in another sense. If you haven't seen your friend for like a year or a few months or a few weeks, you might call them up and say, hey, I miss you. Let's go get some coffee and catch up. Let's go get some coffee and catch up, which means I just want to talk to you about your life. I want to see what's going on in your life. We haven't talked to each other in a long time. We both miss each other dearly. So let's go get some coffee and catch up with each other. Catch up on each other's life. 2 different definitions. To be honest with you, the definition I just told you, I didn't prepare to tell you that definition, but when I was reading the first definition, I was like, this could be confusing because this also means catching up with like friends, and this video is friendship edition. So there you go, right off the bat, the first one is a 2 for 1. The first example that I'm going to share is related to the first definition that I shared, which means to reach the same level or standard as someone or something after falling behind. So example number 1 is, I need to catch up with the latest news. I need to catch up with the latest news. That's me every day because I don't really like to watch the news. It's kind of depressing, but every now and then I'm like, you know what? I need to catch up on it because I don't know what's going on in the world. I need to catch up with the latest news. A different example for the second definition that I gave you, which means just to talk to a friend or colleague or family member, talk to someone after not talking to them for a long period of time. The example for that is Susan and I met for coffee to catch up. Susan and I met for coffee to catch up. You haven't seen them for a long time. You're gonna meet up, talk, catch up on each other's lives, see what's going on with each other. That is the first phrasal verb. The second one I would like to teach you all today is to get ripped off by. I know, dun dun dun, to get ripped off by. Now, I did say that this video was friendship edition. However, not all friends are good friends. I'm going to teach you this phrasal verb, ripped off by, to get ripped off by. It just means to be cheated or overcharged by something. To be cheated or overcharged by something, to get ripped off by. I have a quick little story. When I was in Korea, I remember getting my nails done for the very first time. And this was like 2012. And in America in 2012, I was able to get my nails done for like maybe $50. It was not that expensive. These days, because of the designs I usually like to do, it's way more than that. I actually went to the nail salon today and I got a pedicure, not a manicure, and it was $140. So it's expensive now. But this was, 2012. And I got my nails done and there was a sign outside of the nail shop that said like $30. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cheap. But by the time I was done with everything, it was like $95. And I'm like, that math, I'm not good at math, but that doesn't seem correct. And she just went through and she was like, oh, this is extra, this is extra, this is extra. And by the end of the day, I was like, whatever, I paid it. But I did feel slightly like I got ripped off because what I got was nice, but it was not worth $90. And also, it was worth $90 in this day and age, not 12 years ago in 2012. So I felt like, yeah, I kind of got ripped off. I never went back to that nail salon. I found a different one who was way better and way cheaper. So I started going there, but I felt like I got ripped off. So when you get ripped off by someone or something, it just means that you are cheated or overcharged by something. So an example sentence of this, I felt like I got ripped off by that mechanic. I felt like I got ripped off by that mechanic. Ripped off by, again, to be cheated or overcharged by something. You never know. You can get ripped off by anyone. So be careful out there.
Even if you think they're your friend.
The third phrasal verb that we're going to learn today is to go for a ride. To go for a ride. And this just means to take a trip or journey in a vehicle, often for pleasure. If you go for a ride, you take a trip or a journey in a car or sometimes a bike or any kind of means of transportation. And it's usually for no other reason than for fun, your own pleasure, just to have a good time. You're bored and you have nothing else better to do, you go for a ride. So when I was younger, my parents used to do this all the time. Now, backstory is my parents are a little bit older than my friends' parents because my parents had me when they were older. So my parents were actually born in the 1950s. When my parents were young, cars were kind of a new concept, not super new, but like it was still a new concept. And when nobody had anything to do in the 1950s, 1960s, you would go for a ride. You would just drive around town in your new fancy car, learn how to drive. Kids didn't have seat belts or car seats or anything. You would just go for a ride. Now, my parents, when I was growing up, we used to do the same thing sometimes because my parents were kind of reminiscing on when they were kids and how their parents used to take them for a ride. And then now they did it for me. And then now sometimes I do it with my kids too. We have nothing else better to do. Okay, let's go for a ride and maybe we'll stop and get ice cream or something. We're bored, nothing to do, let's go for a ride, which just again means to take a trip or journey by some kind of means of transportation, a vehicle of some sorts, often for pleasure. You don't have any place in mind that you want to go or that you need to go. You're just bored or you want to get out of the house, you go for a ride. All right, so for the example for to go for a ride, we have let's go for a ride in the new car this weekend. Let's go for a ride in the new car this weekend. Go for a ride. And now this next one, number 4, is to fall apart. And this just means to break down into pieces or to deteriorate either physically or emotionally. You break down into pieces or deteriorate either physically or emotionally. Fall apart. So an example of this is you can fall apart, your appliances can fall apart, your vehicle can fall apart. Pretty much anything that is built can fall apart. Typically when we say that we're falling apart, it's talking about emotionally, but I mean, you never know. My mom jokes sometimes, she's older, so she goes to the doctor a lot, quite often. And she tells me about what's happening, oh, there's something wrong with my back, there's something wrong with my arm, my heart. And she jokes and says that she's falling apart because she's getting older. So we joke and we're like, no, you're not falling apart. She's like, I'm falling apart, Carly. Sometimes you can use it in that sense as well. However, typically when you say something is falling apart, this phrasal verb to fall apart, it's talking about something that was built. You have a desk and my desk, maybe the leg is torn off on one side, the other side is chipping, it can barely stand, it's falling apart. Or your car, the bumper's gone, the windshield is busted and it's barely going down the expressway. It's falling apart, If it's just breaking down or deteriorating, we can say it's falling apart. So an example sentence of this is the old book started to fall apart after years of use. The old book started to fall apart after years of use. That's one example. However, I did tell you that this phrasal verb can also mean to break down either physically or emotionally. I'm going to give you another example about the emotional aspect of it. If you break down, like you have an emotional breakdown, you can say, she felt like her life was falling apart after the breakup. She felt like her life was falling apart after the breakup. So that's kind of like emotional damage. Emotional damage. Okay, sorry, I have to say that. But you know, whenever you go through something really tough, example, a breakup, or maybe, you know, maybe a loss of a loved one or anything like that, you could feel that sometimes you just feel like you're falling apart. You feel like you don't know what to do with yourself. You feel like everything is against you in this world and you don't know how you're going to survive. Emotionally, you feel like you are falling apart. So hopefully you guys know you can fall apart physically, like you can actually fall apart, and then you can also fall apart emotionally, like gone through a lot and your emotions are crazy and you just feel like you're falling apart. So the final one that I have for you all today is to let down. To let down. Let down. This just means to disappoint someone or fail to meet their expectations. To disappoint someone or fail to meet their expectations. To let down. Before I give the actual example that I have prepared for you all, I want to give you a short little story about letting down. I remember one year for April Fool's joke, and this was like a long time ago. I saw this joke on Facebook where you buy a box of Krispy Kreme donuts, but instead of putting Krispy Kreme donuts inside, you put like a vegetable tray and you hide it. I did that and I hid the vegetables and I brought it to my work. I was teaching at the time and I brought it to work and all the teachers were like, and then they opened it and they're like, really? And I was like, and I had like a little sign that said April Fools. And it was really funny. But then when I brought it home after the end of the day, like some people still ate it because they're like, oh, okay, like I like vegetables too. So they still ate it. But then when I brought it home at the end of the day, I had it on the table and my son, who was like 2 or 3 years old at the time, my oldest son, he was so excited. He was like, oh, donuts, donuts. And then he climbed up to like get one. He opens it and his face is like, Mommy, what's this? And I look and I'm like, oh, it's April Fool's joke. And you could see that he was so let down. Like he was crushed. He was like, he was so sad, you know? Again, let down means to be disappointed or to fail to meet the expectation. The expectation there was he was about to get a donut. He was excited to get Krispy Kreme donuts, which at that time, the place that we were living, there was a Krispy Kreme near our house. And I used to get him donuts every now and then if he was good or whatever. He was excited, like, oh, Mommy got me donuts today. And then he opened it up and it was vegetables. He was let down. So the actual example I have prepared for you all is, I promise to help with the project, so I don't want to let down my team. I promise to help with the project, so I don't want to let down my team. Let down. Just a final recap for you all. Number 5 was to let down. Number 4 was to fall apart. Number 3 was to go for a ride. Number 2 was to get ripped off by. And number 1 was to catch up with. The 5 phrasal verbs that, in my opinion, are important to know, especially when it comes to making friends or having friends. Friendship edition. Now, I don't know if this is going to become a series because, like I said, there's 1,000,001 phrasal verbs. And some are very self-explanatory, so I don't really need a whole video on them, but let me know what you think. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, and I hope to see you all in the next video.